I'm Veronica Dudo in Washington, D.C. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly, breaking the blockade. Washington launches a bold naval convoy in the Strait of Hormuz, while President Trump dismisses Iran's latest unsatisfactory peace offer. Allied friction. Lawmakers condemn President Trump's Germany troop withdrawal, warning of a wrong signal to Putin's Russia, and alarming NATO allies. Overruled ruling. The Supreme Court weighs in on the availability of a chemical abortion pill. Plus, World Press Freedom Day. Pope Leo XIV defends press freedom and honors journalists killed by war as the world's fallen witnesses. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us on the feast day of St. Florian. Our top story tonight, President Donald Trump announces a new plan for the Strait of Hormuz. He wants to safely guide ships through the waterway. Many cargo and oil vessels have been blocked by the war with Iran. And the Islamic Republic continues to push back. President Trump says Iran has taken some shots at other nations' ships, and the U.S. shot back, sinking 7 small boats. President Donald Trump welcomes people to the East Room of the White House.
I'm thrilled to be with you and welcome you to the most fabulous place, the White House.
Today's small business event follows a series of updates over the weekend about the war with Iran.
There's a lot of energy out there of ships all over the world that are loaded up with it. They can't do much with it because they got kidnapped by a pretty evil place.
The president said countries around the world asked the U.S. if we could help free up their ships, which are locked up in the Strait of Hormuz, so that they can freely and ably get on with their business.
Well, the situation is clearly evolving. It is really important that we get the Strait of Hormuz open because that is directly impacting on our economy in the United Kingdom.
The U.S. military says 2 American-flagged merchant ships already transited the strait today. The president calls the process Project Freedom. He believes it would be for the good of Iran, but he also warns any interference will unfortunately have to be dealt with forcefully. U.S. Central Command denies Iran struck U.S. Navy ships during the new effort to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. But the United Arab Emirates says it did come under attack by Iran today for the first time since the ceasefire started last month. All this comes as the U.S. continues to negotiate with Iran. Trump says those discussions could lead to something very positive for all. A spokesman for the Iranian Foreign Ministry says,
"The American side has responded to Iran's proposed plan, meaning it has conveyed its views to the Pakistani side. We will review this, and I will show you the necessary reaction regarding it."
Norman T. Rule is a former senior CIA official and served as the National Intelligence Manager for Iran in the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Norman, thanks so much for coming back on today.
My pleasure.
Now, we are hearing some reports about Iran firing on the UAE. What is behind their thought process with some of these strikes to neighbor countries?
We're watching Iran demonstrate its commitment to taking control over one of the most strategic waterways on the planet. Its intent will give it the capacity not only to control the import of food, supplies, and the economic drivers for the 6 GCC countries as a whole and Iraq, but will also allow it to control the exports of energy and distillates to the entire global economy. This is the equivalent of almost an economic nuclear weapon against the world that Iran is deploying. Iran would have its foot on the throat of the GCC and the global economy if it's allowed to get away with this.
We know the U.S. military says it successfully transitioned to American-flagged merchant ships through the Strait of Hormuz. What does transitioned mean, and were they escorted?
Well, they don't appear to be escorted. What appears to be happening is the United States has advised these ships how it can operate in safe lanes. It's providing this information through an electronic data board and through transmissions. The United States is probably also providing air surveillance and is monitoring the activity of those ships. The question becomes what would happen if the Iranians undertook action against those ships and how the U.S. would respond. In this case, you would expect the United States would probably provide defense of those ships through air assets, but it would depend upon the nationality of the ships, the rules that were set up by the countries that operate those ships, and the specific military circumstances of each case.
This has predominantly been an air and missile campaign. Of course, Tomahawks are very expensive. Can you talk a little bit about the situation regarding munitions and the stockpile in the United States, and then also how we're seeing Iran using very cheap drones?
Yes, so this campaign has used a significant amount of our most important, expensive, and effective munitions, from Tomahawk missiles to interceptors that we have used to bring down the vast majority of the missiles and drones that Iran has fired against our Gulf Cooperation Council partners. And one need only look at the numbers to see how effective these munitions have been. I mean, the Emirates, for example, have faced 2,000 missiles and drones, and they've brought down the vast majority of these. That says an awful lot about American technology and the skill of our Emirati partners. But the pool of the available munitions is finite, obviously, and our industrial base to produce these has limits upon it as well. So this is of great concern to the Pentagon because we are drawing upon material we would use against China. And the White House has engaged manufacturers, to include even the auto industry, to see if they could contribute to producing some of the material used in the weaponry. This is a serious challenge that deserves significant focus by Congress and the administration.
Norman Rule, thanks so much. We always appreciate your insights.
You're welcome.
The war in Iran is now having an effect on American military presence in Europe. President Trump has ordered the Pentagon to begin withdrawing thousands of troops from Germany. It's deepening a public feud with Germany, causing unease among U.S. lawmakers. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales joins us with reaction. Eric, this comes at a critical time.
Oh, it certainly does, Veronica. You know, this announcement follows a week of escalating tension after the German chancellor criticized the U.S.'s conflict with Iran. He claimed Tehran was humiliating President Trump. The initial 5,000 troop reduction is only a small drawdown from the 36,000 active duty troops in Germany, but President Trump says it's just the beginning.
We're going to cut way down, and we're cutting a lot further than 5,000.
White House officials say the drawdown would take up to a year, but President Trump is facing bipartisan backlash from Congress.
He is getting emotional and angry about this, and he's making really consequential troop movement decisions based upon being upset by the comments of a foreign leader, which is no way to run a foreign policy.
In a joint statement, the Republican chairs of both the House and Senate Armed Services Committees argue that withdrawing troops now strengthens Russia in the war against Ukraine. Quote, "We're very concerned by the decision. Prematurely reducing America's forward presence in Europe risks undermining deterrence and sending the wrong signal to Vladimir Putin. Any significant change to U.S. force posture in Europe warrants a deliberate review process." Some say sending troops to the Eastern European region would be a strong deterrent against the Russian leader.
It's in our national security interest that Ukraine prevails. What happens if Ukraine does not? Moldova will be next. You could take that to the bank. Maybe Georgia.
Let's arm them.
Democratic Senator Ruben Gallego accused President Trump and previous administrations of not ending the war in Ukraine a priority.
Whenever there is a change of administration, that whether it's a Democrat or Republican, we have to make the decision. We want Ukraine to win. Ukraine is good for world stability. Ukraine destroying Russia is good for world stability, and we should make that investment to do it. We have not done that as a nation.
Another interesting fact, Germany's defense minister is downplaying the U.S. move, saying that it was expected and Europe must do more for its own security. Since World War II, the U.S. usually has nearly 80,000 troops on the continent. President Trump also indicated that he may also draw down some troop reductions in Italy and Spain. Lawmakers are sure to have more to say about this when they return back to Capitol Hill next week. Veronica, back to you.
Thanks, Eric. At the 8th European Political Community Summit in Armenia, President Zelensky called for a unified European voice to confront Russian aggression and force Moscow towards diplomacy.
We need to focus on what we will do if Russia does not end this war. We need continued pressure and we need peace. And of course, it's number one. We need to find a workable diplomatic format.
Meanwhile, an overnight Russian strike hit the Sumy region, targeting civilian infrastructure. 6 residential buildings and several vehicles were also caught in the blast. Fortunately, authorities reported no injuries, but damage assessments continue. In a different attack, a Russian missile strike has hit the Kharkiv region, killing at least 5 people and wounding 18 others. Local officials say 4 of those injured remain in critical condition following the blast. Survivors describe a scene of total destruction as dozens of apartments were badly damaged. As the conflicts in Ukraine, Iran, and Gaza rage on, images of death and destruction dominate news cycles and fill social media feeds. So what does this mean for our capacity regarding compassion and younger generations? Joining us now to discuss how this exposure could be impacting us is Associate Professor Eileen Dombo of the National Catholic School of Social Service at the Catholic University of America. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, happy to be here.
So from a psychological perspective, does repeated exposure to violent imagery reduce our sensitivity to real-world suffering?
It really does. There's a term called habituation that comes into play where we get used to something when it's kind of shown to us over time, or we're exposed to it over time. We get normalized in a sense, and that habituation can lead to a less intense reaction, that it just sort of is something that we tend to see.
Is there a difference between how people process real-life war footage versus simulated violence in video games and movies?
Absolutely. When we're not sure if something is real, and this is true more and more with AI and not knowing whether a video is AI generated or real, we tend to, not react if we think it might be somehow fiction. And so when we are exposed to it through television or video games or movies, then that's part of the habituation where we think, well, this might not be real anyway.
Are younger generations who've grown up immersed in digital media more at risk of becoming desensitized, or are they developing different forms of empathy?
I think they're developing different forms of empathy, but they certainly are digital natives. And so they're used to seeing images, they're used to seeing snippets of TikTok videos. And so they're not used to sitting with long-term exposure, but they're used to snippets. And so when they see that, it's just easy to scroll right past it. So, they can avoid the imagery if they want to.
What are the real-world consequences, and is there a way to rebuild or protect our sense of compassion?
The real biggest consequence is that it doesn't generate action or advocacy. If people are numb or they're overwhelmed or overloaded, then they're withdrawing. And so a sense of community around these issues is really needed right now. So the ability for people to come together, in person to advocate for change or advocate for action is really what's needed. And we're sorely lacking that right now.
Professor Eileen Dombo, thank you.
You're welcome.
The Supreme Court has restored nationwide access to the abortion pill mifepristone for now. In a brief order, Justice Samuel Alito paused a lower court ruling that prevented abortion providers from prescribing pills by mail or through telehealth appointments. Justice Alito issued the administrative stay on his own since he is the justice assigned to handle emergency applications for the region covered by the Fifth Circuit. The order stands until May 11th, but Justice Alito requested parties file briefs by Thursday, and then the full court will decide how to proceed. Joining us to explain what has been happening in the courts is Michael New, an assistant professor of practice at the Catholic University of America and senior associate scholar at the Charlotte Lozier Institute. Today, the Supreme Court blocked a lower court's decision to ban the mailing of the abortion pill mifepristone. What happens after the stay on the order expires on May 11th?
That's a good question. I mean, the Supreme Court has required that both parties file legal briefs by Thursday, and then the Supreme Court is going to decide what to do. They may let the Fifth Circuit Court's decisions stand and put a ban on telehealth abortions. They may invite oral arguments. We don't know. We can't predict with certainty. What happened today was kind of pro forma, procedural. Justice Alito handles disputes that come out of the Fifth Circuit, or he handles emergency petitions. So all we know is that petitions are going to be filed by this Thursday, and then by May 11th, we'll have some clarity about how the court will proceed.
Can you explain the Food and Drug Administration's history with the regulation of chemical abortions and how it's become available through mail?
Sure. The Food and Drug Administration first approved the chemical abortion pill during the Clinton administration in the year 2000. And when they first approved it, they actually required that women seeking chemical abortions had to make 3 in-person visits to medical professionals in order to have a chemical abortion. That got reduced to 1 visit in 2016 by the FDA. And then during the COVID pandemic in 2021, they basically allowed for telehealth abortions, which allowed for women to obtain these chemical abortion pills without any in-person visits to a medical provider. Now, that was supposed to be a temporary measure during the COVID-19 pandemic. However, sadly, the Biden administration and even the Trump administration have continued this unwise policy and have allowed for women to obtain these chemical abortion drugs without an in-person visit.
How widespread are telehealth abortion drugs, and why are they able to so effectively undermine pro-life laws?
They're very prevalent. According to the most recent data we have, in 2024, there were over 240,000 telehealth abortions done in the United States. The most recent data we have from the Society of Family Planning indicates that about 28% of all abortions are telehealth abortions. So it's a large number, and they really do undermine a lot of the good, strong pro-life laws that have been enacted since the Dobbs decision, because women living in states with these strong pro-life laws like Texas, Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi can simply go online, order these pills, and it really does undermine, weaken these good pro-life laws that have been passed since Dobbs.
Michael New, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. Much appreciated.
We have a lot more still to come on EWTN News Nightly. Hantavirus concerns as an international health emergency unfolds in the Atlantic. We speak with an expert about what travelers need to know, and a plane landing that nearly turns into disaster right after the break. Terrifying scene is caught on a dash cam in New Jersey. The incident involved a plane landing. Take a look. The wheel of a United Airlines flight arriving at Newark International Airport hit a truck while landing. This happened yesterday. Thankfully, the man driving the truck only suffered minor injuries. The jet was flying in from Venice and landed safely with more than 200 people on board. The National Transportation Safety Board will investigate the incident. An international health emergency is unfolding in the Atlantic. The World Health Organization confirms a hantavirus outbreak aboard an expedition ship, which has already claimed 3 lives. The vessel, operated by Ocean-Wide Expeditions, is currently anchored off Cape Verde after traveling from Argentina. While 1 case is lab confirmed, at least 5 other passengers are showing severe respiratory symptoms. The victims include a Dutch couple and a British national. This rare virus is typically spread by rodents, and experts are investigating if this specific strain could have human-to-human transmission on board. Dr. William Schaffner, a professor of infectious diseases at Vanderbilt University Medical Center, joins me now. Thank you so much for your time.
Good to be with you, Veronica.
So first, can you tell us what is hantavirus?
Hantavirus is a virus that lives in rodents, small mice and the like, and it can occasionally infect humans and potentially make them very, very ill. Humans get exposed to the virus by actually getting in contact in some fashion with the excreta, the urine and the stool of these rodents. And you can get it on your fingers and then transmit it to yourself, or there's frequently an aerosol that takes place. Maybe you're cleaning up something where these excreta are, and then you inhale the virus. And then it makes you ill, principally with a respiratory illness.
Are there any treatments that exist for this?
Well, there are no direct treatments, but we can give supportive care. There are several interesting things about this virus. First of all, a person who's infected cannot give it to someone else. It's not transmissible from person to person. So that's a very good thing. The other thing is that this is a sneaky virus. It starts to make you ill several days after the exposure, and the initial illness is rather mild. You think you have, just a little mild viral infection. You may have some fever, you don't feel terribly well, you have some muscular aches and pains, and you have a little fever. That goes on for 2, maybe 3 days, and then you crash. You get very seriously ill because this virus is now down in your lungs and can also affect your heart, and that's why it can have a high fatality rate.
And of course, this is in the news because of the group of people on the cruise ship. For people living their everyday lives, how can they prevent an infection?
Well, in those areas of the country here in the United States, usually in the Southwest, which is where this virus is in rodents, people are advised to be very careful, wear masks if they clean up dusty environments or wet down the environments first before they do that. It's not really clear where these passengers acquired their infection. Could it have been on the cruise ship? Or is it perhaps more likely that when they went to a port, these passengers disembarked and did something on the land that exposed them to the virus?
Dr. William Schaffner, thank you. Of course, we want people to be aware, not alarmed. So again, thank you for your insights.
My pleasure.
Up next on EWTN News Nightly, Valiant Voices, Pope Leo praises fallen reporters' brave legacy. Plus, papal ordinations, the Holy Father entrusts 4 new bishops to serve the people of Rome. At his Sunday Regina Coeli, Pope Leo XIV took the time to draw attention to journalists who have risked and lost their lives in war zones.
Oggi si celebra la giornata mondiale.
Today marks World Press Freedom Day, promoted by UNESCO. Unfortunately, this right is often violated, sometimes blatantly, sometimes in more subtle ways. Let us remember the many journalists and reporters who have fallen victim to wars and violence.
The Holy Father reminded the faithful that we are called to anticipate heaven on earth and to reveal to all that peace and fraternity are our calling. Pope Leo is known as the Bishop of Rome, but leading the diocese is not something he can do alone. This weekend, he ordained 4 new helpers. EWTN News' Benedict Sedegren has more.
In the Eternal City, the Bishop of Rome enters into his cathedral, the Archbasilica of St. John Lateran, to elevate 4 priests to the office of bishop.
La nostra comunità diocesana.
Our diocesan community gathers today in the invocation of the Holy Spirit, who will anoint the new bishops so that they may be fully consecrated to the services of the gospel of Christ.
Each will serve in the role of auxiliary bishop, helping Pope Leo lead his diocese. It's a task the Holy Father says is rooted in the image of Christ as the stone rejected by the world that became the cornerstone of the universal church.
It is the heart of our proclamation, of our mission. We have seen the Holy One touch the unclean, the Just One forgive sinners, life heal the sick, the Master wash the dirty and tired feet of his disciples.
The 4 men, Andrea Carlevale, Stefano Sparapani, Alessandro Zenobi, and Marco Valenti, are either from Rome or the surrounding area. Shepherds chosen from the very flock they will help to lead.
È una festa di popolo.
It is a feast for the people, because they come from this people, and from the presbyterate that cares for them with love.
With these 4 additions, there are now 7 auxiliary bishops in the Diocese of Rome. The functions they will perform vary from ordaining priests to celebrating confirmations to helping with the administrative needs of the diocese. But Pope Leo also calls on them to fill another role, that of prophecy.
Sarete profeti nel vostro ministero.
You will be prophets in your ministry if you are men of peace and unity, weaving with threads of grace and mercy the vast and populous spaces of this diocese, harmonizing differences, welcoming, listening, and forgiving. Do not make yourselves sought after, make yourselves found.
Fatevi trovare.
Above all, these 4 men are called on to remind each and every person that they are a beloved son or daughter of the Father.
Nessuno.
No one, absolutely no one, should ever think of themselves as rejected by God, and you will be heralds of this beautiful news.
The Lateran Archbasilica is called the mother and head of all churches in the city and in the world. Consequently, says the Holy Father, the actions of these new bishops will not just sound in Rome, but will echo across the globe.
You, who together with the Cardinal Vicar, will be able to help me be a reflection of the Good Shepherd for the Roman people, and to preside over the charity of the entire holy people of God, scattered throughout the earth.
In Rome, Benedict Cedegrian for EWTN News Nightly.
We thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, X, YouTube, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Veronica Dudo. Good night and God bless.